Hello. So we are talking about women in the American Revolution today. And this is actually a topic that is pretty close to, it's in my interest. It's in my range of interest because this is actually the topic I've chosen for my research paper for my American Revolution class. So when we talk about women during the Revolution, a lot of times we just don't have the full story of what was going on. For reference, we're using the article How Betsy Ross Became Famous by Laurel Thatcher Ulrich. And in this article, it is said, I guess, that Betsy Ross was not a real person. And I think a lot of us probably already know that. That's something that's not brand new information. She's a composite that is probably based on a lot of people, but it's suggested that most notably she's based on a woman named Elizabeth Claiborne, I believe. Claypool. Excuse me. I'm so sorry. Elizabeth Claypool. And she was a woman who fit, the article says she fit the narrative. There wasn't just one original flag. There were several of them. And probably lots of women met together to create American flags. But that image of, Betsy Ross in her red, white, and blue dress with her bonnet, sitting in her rocking chair, sewing the flag, at least that's the image in my head. I'm not sure what comes into your mind, but that's the picture I have in my head. And that's just a composite. But this is what has happened so often in American history, and especially the further you go back in American history. It's not that women weren't important. It's not that they didn't have their role. But what has been remembered, and like I say in my research paper, history is often remembered as what was written down at the time. And if people didn't write down the stories, especially if they didn't write them down accurately, then it's a lot harder to have that sort of picture in our minds. But you hear about, all the different men that fought in the Revolution, and we know that there were women. We know that they were assets to the Patriots. We know that that was something that was happening. But really, we know Abigail Adams, and we know her story. And there are other women whose stories that we are told, but their stories, like Betsy Ross, are composite. So the person that I'm using as a sort of, if Betsy Ross is the tent pole, then the story that I'm using to sort of support that is that of Molly Pitcher. And so in one article, in the Christian Science Monitor, it's entitled Women of the Revolution, Molly Pitcher. It's suggested that she was probably a composite of a couple of different women, one of whom was Mary Hayes, another of whom was Margaret Cochran Corbin. Molly was a very common nickname at the time for both Molly and, Molly was a very common nickname for both Mary and Margaret. But we do know that women we do know that there were women who were Molly Pitchers, who went onto the battlefield to aid the soldiers, a lot of times their husband, in the battle, and through different instances. Another resource I found was Molly Pitcher, The Woman Who Fought the War by Mark Cunningham. And in his book, he says the popular opinion among historians is that stories of several young women who helped out got merged and attributed to Mary Ludwig. All young women who carried water to the soldiers were called Molly Pitcher. And there are many accounts that have been written about Molly Pitcher, but they were probably written about several different women. It's important to look at who these women were individually and their contribution to the war should be recognized. And that's what I'm hoping to do in my research. But this was a really great, I enjoyed this discussion quite a bit. I can't wait to get into some conversation with some of my classmates. So I hope this has been helpful, and I appreciate you guys watching. Bye.